Hey everyone, and welcome back. As always, if you are enjoying the show, please take a moment to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. Today, we are looking into something pretty substantial, the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2025.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it might just sound like another budget bill,
Right.
but I guarantee you this thing has a ton of fascinating details that go way beyond just the dollars and cents.
That's true. You can kind of think of it as a blueprint for the future of the U.S. military. It covers everything from cutting-edge technologies to even like the human aspects of military life, you know?
Okay, so before we get too far into it, what are some of the big takeaways that you're seeing here?
Well, one thing that's really obvious is just the emphasis on technology, particularly AI. We're seeing it basically woven into every aspect of defense. There's even a dedicated replicator initiative that's focused on the really rapid development and deployment of autonomous systems. It's almost like science fiction in a way.
AI for everything, huh?
Yeah.
Now, that's interesting. Could you give us an example of how that actually plays out in the Act?
Sure. Section 237, for example, outlines a pilot program for using AI to make operations in facilities like depots and shipyards more efficient. Like, imagine AI algorithms that are managing logistics, scheduling maintenance, and even predicting equipment failures. I mean, the potential there for increased efficiency is huge.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. It's pretty remarkable. But you also mentioned AI and biotechnology.
Yeah.
That sounds a little more complicated.
It is, and it raises some pretty important questions. You know, Section 236 actually authorizes a pilot program that will explore using AI and biotechnology for national security. This could be anything from developing defenses against bioweapons to, and this is where it gets really interesting, potentially even using AI to create them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely an area with both incredible possibilities and ethical considerations.
AI creating bioweapons, huh? That does sound like it could be a problem. It seems like this act is really trying to prepare the military for a very different future. What other themes are you noticing?
Another major focus is on the workforce. The Act really acknowledges the challenges that the military faces in attracting and retaining skilled personnel, especially when it comes to things like cybersecurity and shipbuilding.
Yeah, cybersecurity is a big deal right now. It seems like everyone's trying to find qualified people, so how does the Act try to address that?
It kind of takes a multi-pronged approach. It proposes things like specialized training programs, increasing bonuses, and even initiatives to make it easier to recruit military members into the intelligence community. Basically, they're trying to sweeten the deal and make these jobs more appealing.
Okay, so kind of like a target and talent search. Now, what about global partnerships? Is there anything in the Act about that?
Absolutely. The Act really emphasizes strengthening relationships with allies, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region. And it includes a lot of provisions for increasing cooperation when it comes to everything from cybersecurity to missile defense. Like, the message is pretty clear. Global challenges need global solutions.
So it's not just about building up our own military, but also working with partners around the world.
Exactly. It's acknowledging that in today's world, we can't go it alone.
All right, so we've got a big focus on technology, especially AI, addressing workforce challenges, and bolstering global partnerships. Now, let's get into some specifics. What are some details that really stood out to you?
One fascinating section is 509D. What it does is it eliminates the active duty service requirement for warrant officer appointments in both the Air Force and the Space Force.
The Space Force. Okay, now that is interesting. Why is that change so significant?
It basically opens the door for people with really specific skills, but no prior military experience to become Space Force officers. Think cybersecurity experts, engineers, data scientists, people who have the expertise that's essential for space operations. It's a pretty big change, and it suggests they're really trying to get the best and the brightest, regardless of their background.
Wow, that is a major departure from the traditional military recruitment model. Does this suggest that the Act is also changing how the military is structured as a whole?
It does seem to be pushing in that direction, yeah. Another interesting thing is in Section 511, it actually lets the military extend the service of military technicians until they're 62 years old.
62. That's a lot older than the typical retirement age for most military personnel, right?
It is. It's a direct response to those concerns we talked about earlier about the workforce, and it allows the military to keep those experienced technicians, especially in fields where they're facing a shortage of people. It shows how much they value that experience and institutional knowledge.
So they're trying to balance bringing in new talent with keeping those experts they already have. What else caught your eye as you were looking through the Act?
One section that stood out to me was Subtitle C of Title XE8. It focuses on military unaccompanied housing, and it requires each secretary of the military departments to come up with a plan to fix any shortages they have and make improvements to some of the facilities that aren't in the best shape.
Yeah.
It really shows that Congress is serious about improving things in this area.
Yeah, military housing has been in the news a lot recently. It's good to see that the act is paying attention to it and not just focusing on the fancy new technology, but also, the well-being of the service members themselves.
Right, because a strong military depends on the well-being of its people.
Okay, let's keep going. I'm ready for more. What else do you have?
Another item that was interesting was Section 925. It creates a task force that is dedicated to dealing with unmanned aerial systems, basically a counter-drone task force.
Drones, huh? It seems like they're everywhere these days. It makes sense that the military is paying attention to them, but why a whole task force just for that?
Well, it's because drones pose a growing threat in military conflicts and potentially even in civilian settings. They're getting more and more sophisticated, they're easier to get, and this raises concerns about them being used for bad things. This task force is going to be responsible for coming up with strategies and technologies to deal with that threat.
So it's all about staying ahead of the game and making sure that our military is ready for this new type of warfare. Fascinating stuff. What else is there?
This act also kind of acknowledges, some of the tougher parts of our military history. Section 526A authorizes them to give the Medal of Honor to Master Sergeant Roderick W. Edmonds, but after he's passed away.
The Medal of Honor, huh?
Mm.
That's the highest military decoration for valor, right? What did Master Sergeant Edmonds do to earn such an incredible honor?
Well, his story is, it's a testament to courage and integrity. What we would want our military to be all about. So during World War II, he was captured by the Germans. He ended up a prisoner of war. And while he was a POW, he was ordered to identify all of the Jewish prisoners that were under his command.
Oh, that's an awful situation to be in.
It really is. But Master Sergeant Edmonds refused to follow that order, even though it meant risking his own life to protect the soldiers that were with him.
Wow, that's incredible. It's a good reminder that even when things are really bad, people can choose to do the right thing. A legacy like that deserves to be honored and remembered.
Absolutely. And speaking of the future, let's change gears a little bit and look at Section 1611. It starts the Geospatial Technology Advancement Pilot Program. It's all about developing geospatial technology skills, which are becoming really important for the military these days.
Geospatial technology, for those of us who don't know, could you explain what that is?
Sure. Think of anything that uses technology to understand and visualize data that's connected to geography. So things like GPS, satellite imagery, mapping software, that all fits in that category.
So this program is about making sure that the military has the expertise they need in this very specific but super important field.
Exactly. It's an investment in making sure the workforce of the future has the skills they need to work in a world where this technology is only going to get more and more critical.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot. AI, drones, the Space Force, military housing, education. We've barely even scratched the surface of this giant document. I'm curious, as you've been going through all this, what's been the thing that stood out to you the most so far?
I think the main thing that's really hit me is that this act isn't just about, the money and the equipment. It's about people. It's about making sure those who serve are taken care of, giving them the best tools and training possible, and honoring their service and sacrifice.
It's easy to focus on all the technical stuff and kind of forget about the human element. But at the end of the day, these are people putting their lives on the line.
That's right. And in a lot of ways, this act is a reflection of their needs, the challenges they face, and how the things that threaten them are changing.
As we've been talking about all these different parts, I keep thinking that it feels like we're getting a glimpse into what war will be like in the future.
I agree. The focus on AI, creating the Space Force, concentrating on counter-drone tech, it all points to a very different type of battlefield than what we've seen before.
And how all of these changes will end up, well, no one really knows. We've talked about some of the risks that could come with AIs, for example, and it's pretty obvious that there are a lot of ethical and strategic things to think about carefully.
For sure. Technology is moving so fast, and the military has to keep up if it wants to stay ahead. But how we actually use all this tech and what it means for the future of war are things we all have to think about.
Okay, so are we ready to keep looking at this massive document?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we were talking about how this act feels like a glimpse into the future of warfare.
Yeah, it really does.
And I think one area where we see that is the Space Force.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of changes are we seeing there?
Well, we talked earlier about Section 509D, how it lets people with specialized skills become Space Force officers, even without prior military experience.
Right, opening the door for all the cybersecurity experts and engineers, data scientists, all that.
Exactly. And that shift really highlights how conflict is changing in space. It's not about those traditional military operations anymore.
Right.
It's cyber warfare, intelligence gathering, making sure our tech is better. It's a whole new battleground up there.
It's like they're building a military branch straight out of a science fiction movie.
In a lot of ways, yeah. And these changes aren't just limited to the Space Force. The Act also talks about how important it is to keep experienced personnel in all the branches.
Right, like Section 511, where they extend the service of military technicians to age 62.
Yes, it's about recognizing that experience and the knowledge they've built up over the years is so valuable, especially now with all this new technology.
Right.
You need those veterans to teach and guide the next generation.
It's about finding that balance between bringing in new people and keeping the ones who have all that experience.
Exactly. It's a smart way to manage the workforce and make sure the military has the skills and experience to deal with whatever might come up.
So I've talked about AI, the Space Force, drones, workforce development. I mean, this act seems to cover everything about the military.
It does. And it even covers some of the, maybe less exciting but still super important things like housing.
Right. Subtitle C of Title XC8. The part where they're telling the secretaries of the military departments to come up with plans for how they're going to make unaccompanied housing better.
It might seem like a small thing compared to everything else, but having good housing for service members is crucial for their morale.
Yeah. I mean, if you're stressed about where you're going to sleep, you're not going to be able to focus on your mission.
Exactly. It's about giving them the support they need to do their jobs well and to feel good doing it.
And when we talk about missions, we can't forget about how much technology, especially drones, is changing modern warfare. Section 925 and that counter-drone task force really highlights that.
Drones are being used more and more in conflicts around the world, and this act knows that our military needs to figure out how to deal with them. It's about staying ahead of the game and making sure our forces are ready for this new kind of fighting.
It really shows how much the way we fight wars is changing, and the military has to change too if it wants to keep up.
Absolutely. And even with all these new technologies and changes in strategy, the Act still remembers the past. It reminds us of the courage and sacrifice that have always been at the heart of military service.
Like Master Sergeant Roderick W. Edmonds getting the Medal of Honor.
What he did back in World War II, refusing to single out those Jewish prisoners even if it meant he could die, that shows what the military should really be about.
It's a powerful story.
It is.
It shows that true heroism isn't about, all the weapons and tech. It's about who you are as a person.
It's about doing what's right no matter what.
We've covered a lot in this look at the National Defense Authorization Act, from AI and drones to the Space Force and military housing. It's been pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it has.
It really shows how this act is so much more than just a budget. It's like a plan for the future of the U.S. military, showing all the things we're facing, what's most important to us, and the values we want to stand for.
Absolutely.
It's been great unpacking all of this with you. I feel like I've learned so much about what goes into making our country safe.
It's always interesting to take a close look at these documents and see what they really mean.
As we finish up here, I'm left wondering, with all this talk about AI and how fast technology is changing, what's going to happen to war itself in the future?
That's a question we should all be thinking about. We don't know for sure what the future holds, but one thing's for sure, the U.S. military is ready to change and adapt to whatever comes next.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2025. It's been a really interesting look at military policy.
I hope our listeners have enjoyed coming along with us.
If you'd like to learn more, definitely go check out the source material and see what catches your eye. And we always love to hear what you think, what stuck out to you, what questions you still have. Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Until next time, stay curious.